course, the virtuosity of the way that they painted fabrics and the way that they painted faces and the way that they applied the paint. But the placement of the figures was dependent upon a sort of mathematical schematic. And so I thought about artificial realism in 1988 as a way to describe my work to the late, great art historian Robert Rosenblum, who said, "What do you call this stuff? And, you know, is it neo-surrealism? Oh, and what is it?" I said, "I don't like neo. I like new expressions." And so I said, "But it has to have an ism." So I said, "It's artificial realism." And he said, "What does it mean?" And I said, "It's the realistic representation of that which is artificial." And so I had to study that and think about it quite a bit. And it really came down to the idea that the word artificial, if you look it up in a dictionary, it means man-made. And to be a realist is what I always wanted to be. And a realist is a painter who paints things the way they see them, not the way that they look. They're not representational. And they're personal. And so the combination of the idea of a personal vision mixed together with a sort of man-made sort of world, because reality is that which exists external to our perception. And so it means that, you know, regardless of whether you see it or not, it's, you know, rock someplace in the middle of nowhere really does exist. And so I thought these people that I'm painting, they do exist in my mind, like that rock out there in the middle of the ocean. But when you bring them to life on canvas, they have a sort of eternal existence now, and they're not glamorous by any means. Like you said, they're more tragic than they are glamorous. And it was a reaction to walking into magazine stores and seeing the covers of every magazine with everybody looking perfect. And I thought, you know, this kind of idea of Bruegel and where beggars were and you know, homeless people that you would see today were the people in their paintings. And so I started to paint things like the school bus driver, or the garbage man, or the school teacher, or like, you know, the most ordinary people you can imagine. And I don't know, that's kind of the fact that they're not really tragic. It just happens to be the way I paint them, they feel that way.
Did you back then, or do you still paint much from life? Actually, I believe the time that met Dakis the first time was because he asked if he could sit for a portrait with you. No, they generated a few monstrous interpretations of him and Vieta and Maurizio and many others.
Yeah, no, I did a lot of academic kind of studies from life. I had models come into the studio and worked on things and just would have them sit there for hours and, you know, draw their elbow and draw this and draw that. And then I realized, you know, I'm just so complacent and I'm